their store and see how I like it. Well, it turned out I guess I didn't like it, because when I got out of school, I went to Europe and spent 3 months in Europe, and got back from there and worked at Fisher Buddy for 3 years. And I got a job working in vending machines at Servimation in Lansing, and I worked there for 19 years. No, 10 years, I'm sorry, 10 years. And I left there and went to work for Consolidated Vendors in Muskegon. I worked there for 19 years. And then I had my own vending for 10 years. So I got about 40 years in vending machines.
There you go. Did your mom help you get into Fisher Buddy?
She says no, but I questioned that.
Yeah,
I went to Oldsmobile, and I got turned down because I have one hip that's just a little bit lower than the other hip. And they said you sure, in time you'll have back trouble. And so I thought, well, I can't get a job there. And I already applied at Fisher Buddy. And so Bruce Cheney got me a job over in Grand Ledge working for an IGA store. And it was like $1.25 an hour. And I worked there, I didn't work 2 weeks, I think.
You were married then, weren't you?
Huh?
You were married then?
No. And I got a job at Fisher Buddy. They called me and I went in for the physical. And the guy from the IGA store could not figure out why. Why would I leave this good job at IGA for $1.25 an hour and go to work for Fisher Buddy? Well, at that time I started like $4 something an hour.
The mother worked from 1950 till 1972 when she retired. She never earned as much as $5 an hour. Of course, women didn't earn as much as men did anyway. But
I worked in the body shop at Fisher Buddy.
How'd you like that?
Didn't mind it. The noise is unbearable. It was kind of funny. I worked off the line, and at that time they were. I mean, if you had a heartbeat, they'd hire you. And the general foreman would bring 10, 15, 20 guys down the lines in a group. And this is after they've had their half-hour safety meetings and they got their coveralls and their hammers. And the foreman would stop the group and grab one guy by the arm because it was real noisy. He really couldn't talk very good. He'd point to a job and what he would want, he'd want that guy to learn that job. And I can remember a lot of times seeing guys look at that job and turn around and leave.
when mother went in for her orientation, it was in February of 1950, about the same time your dad went to Oldsmobile. They had their seniority for John was awfully close together. And she went in that one day in 1950, and the guy says, "How many people can start working today?" She raised her hand. And she hitchhiked into Lansing for Eaton Rapids, I guess. Had no way how she's going to get home.
Your mother?
Yeah.
Hitchhiked?
Yeah,
Hitchhiked out by the side of the road?
I think so.
Or did somebody she know?
Somebody she knew picked her up.
Okay, that's not hitchhiking.
And she started that day, and that one day of seniority over these other ladies that said, "No, I can't work tonight," because it was working nights at that time. They worked 3 weeks days, 3 weeks nights. That one extra day of seniority over these other ladies made a big difference when layoffs came in later years. A big difference. And she's always so glad that she started that day. And many times over the years, someone would look at her, they'd see their paychecks. And Helen didn't have any income tax withheld. How come? How come? She had 5 kids, no income tax. Why didn't she have income tax withheld?
Uh-oh. Earthquake there.
And it's all, of course, private information, but nobody treated it as being private. And a lot of people say, "Why don't you go home?" Women don't belong in the shop. They should be home looking after their family, their house. And there's a lot of women working in those days that their husbands had been in the war, they were killed for whatever reason they were working. And they just didn't understand why these women weren't home. But before that, after our father died, she worked in the woolen mill store, and she worked in a dress shop. Her first paycheck in Fisher Body, when she did have withholdings for Social Security and stuff, was greater than her take-home working in the dress shop. That's how much she was making in the dress shop as compared to Fisher Body. But
It was a Marie Style shop.
yeah, I worked in the same store that John did in Arnold, back on IGA. Started there in 1954. Worked until when I graduated from high school, and I just loved it. I could have been in the groceries, I think, except that I went to join the Air Force with Robert and I and a whole bunch of kids in our class, and we all went to Detroit for a physical the same day, and I had a kidney problem. They sent me back the next day, and I went to Albion that fall. I was upset for a few days, but then I wasn't. When I started going to school, I was glad I didn't go with those guys, I guess. And well, a lot of those guys learned a skill in the military. Robert learned about what he was doing, I guess, in the military, somewhat. He always taught. He was kidding with those who can't do, teach. That was not unusual for people who couldn't do something. You could teach others to do something.
I was going to bang. Robert was what they call a technical writer.
Mm-hmm.
He'd write manuals for parts on airplanes and things that were quite valuable information. But he never learned how to program his VCR.
Yeah.
The clock was always
12.
But they were harder to program than they were in later years. Much harder, and there was no much standardization. And I tell all these kids with Doug, our son, who's been a programmer now for 30-some years, that it was easy to tell that programmers were not English majors. They just weren't English majors. I mean, the way the language when they write the information for the public to know wasn't very good instruction. Could have been done much better. You can tell a lot of that stuff was written by somebody in the Orient or from Asia. The syntax or the languages was not our type of English. It just didn't make sense. So it's always interesting to read that stuff. What else did we do? We went camping when we were kids. We used to go over Lake Michigan, and we did that when our dad was there. Some of those kids were sleeping in the back end of our 37 Chevy. Others were sleeping in a pup tent. We take our grandma and Aunt Florence and us, at that time 4 kids, and Mom and Dad in our Chevy over to the state park in Grand Haven. And I wouldn't think of anything more of that than Man in the Moon these days of much. And we took all of our camping gear and your plates and cups and saucers and pots and pans, and we fix our meals in that big, what's that building called? The
pavilion?
The pavilion, yeah. And go in there in the morning, there'd be pancakes cooking here and there. And when we would go out, walk around the campground and see all these travel trailers, and think, boy, someday I'd like to have one of those. We did. Go camping with camping equipment, camping vehicles, not pup tents. And then years later, we went up to towards Mackinac City and camped at what was that? State Forest up there. Overnight had hammocks with double bottoms so you wouldn't get bitten by snakes. That's what the military had in the South Seas. And 2 pup tents, still the same car. I think the Grandma and Florence didn't go with us up there. Also in those days they rented a cottage over in Canada. going across to Sarnia. Another time we rented a cabin up mid-state Michigan by trying to get into the town. There were nothing to write home about. But it was fun.
There's memories you wouldn't throw out. And inspired you later on to buy campers.
No.
After your dad died, did Virginia, being the oldest, did a lot of responsibility fall on her to like babysit or clean up the house, or?
Yeah, for both girls. Mother was always worried that somebody's going to find out that she was off working in Lansing, and her family was being taken care of by, see, 1950, Virginia would have been,
I'd have been 5.
in Virginia in 1950 was,
12 years older, so she,
yeah, 12 or so.
so she'd been 16, 17,
And she graduated in 51,
17.
yeah, 17. And if she was working or something, and the ones who were home looking after themselves, she could lose her children. She always had this worry she could lose her children because those kids are home by themselves. But I think, like Robert and I being twins, being there together, same age, there's an awful lot of stuff we could do that I know we didn't let our sons do in the same town. Of course, times change. I talked to Bonnie what things that we did when we were kids, and she wouldn't in the world let our sons go downtown on Main Street on a Saturday night like we did. We had to go to school on Friday in order to go out on Saturday for the Gremlin Corners or Teens Canteen, whatever. If you didn't go to school on Friday, forget it, you're home for the weekend. So you worked and worked to get to school on Friday, so the one thing you want to go to school on Friday is find out what's going on where. See what the social life is going to be like for the weekend.
Was it a temptation to not go to school on Friday?
But to go to school. If you didn't go to school on Friday, you couldn't go up Saturday.
Yeah, I know, but was it a temptation to not go?
No strong temptation to go to school, even if you didn't feel well, you still went to school. Because you wanted to be able to go out on the weekend.
I was just wondering if she was bribing you to make sure you go on Friday because that's the day
Yeah, if
you
you
want to skip.
No.
I think it's a shame. I don't think Eaton Rapids has a canteen anymore. And I think that's part of our problems with kids. The canteen was a place they could go and dance, play pool, play ping pong.
What was the canteen?
It was a student hangout.
Yeah, I
At
know.
the time, it was above the library. And
The school library or downtown?
downtown library.
Oh, okay.
And they always had adults there shopping, and you could get sloppy joes and pop and other things up there. But it was just a place for the kids to go and hang out. And of course, you weren't allowed to smoke there or drink alcohol or.
It'd not be, it's be above where the city hall is now at, Eaton Rapids.
Wasn't Edna Cohane at your house quite a lot too?
Yeah, she raised me
Would she stay there all day or just
all day. Well, not all
like
night.
even?
No, she went home. I don't know.
Before dinner.
Dinner.
But she'd stay at the house while you were at school?
She was there until John started kindergarten, I guess.
She was there when I was in kindergarten.
Yeah, because you were on half day in those days.
That's a little interesting story. She was a retired school teacher, and she taught I think over towards Leslie, over that was in place.
I'm not sure.
But anyway, she taught me how to spell my name, John C. Blatt, in capital letters. So when I went to school, I knew how to spell John C. Blatt. We come along in junior high school, and Miss Ferguson taught English and world history, or history,
History, I think.
and she wanted us to put our full name on the paper. So I did. And my middle name and everything was all on later, she says, talking about American Indians, she says, I know John's part Indian. And I thought, I know that. It's not true. I knew that I did not have I was English, German, French, whatever, but I was not Indian. She said, your middle name, Cloud.
Cloud, yeah, John.
I never knew how to spell Claude. Had to taught me how to put C down, but not how to spell it.
John Cloud.
Yeah. Because that's why she thought I was an Indian, or part Indian.
He's smoking cloud.
Yeah, and that surprised me when she said that. I just knew that I was not, it was just, she's making it up at first, but then she said your middle name, Cloud.
Tall lady, single lady. And Edna was a short single lady, never married.
Yeah, it kind of tickled me because here she was raising me, because our mother worked, and when I was probably 4 years old, I was as tall as she was, or taller. So when she'd go to discipline me, she'd actually chase me, and I could just take a few steps and be gone. When Edna, we would, we would have Edna over for holidays, and somebody would have to go pick her up and bring her over to the house. And she lived on Brook Street. And of course, by then she's getting a little older, up in 80s?
Could be.
And she had this notion that when she was not home, the kids were breaking into her house. And
taking the most valuable things she had.
Yeah, and messing her rugs up. The rugs were terrible. They were wearing them out. So many kids come in there. Well, the odd part was, those rugs belonged to her mother. Edna's 80, so she'd had them for
probably 80 years.
80 years or whatever, yeah. And yeah, they were wearing out. She had extra locks put on her house. And her back door from the inside had a big 2x4 for a doorstop, so you couldn't open it. And then on the front door, she had, 4 locks?
Could be,
And so when you took her home or picked her up, when you took her home, she'd always pull out this chain out of her blouse with 4 keys in it, and unlock one lock, and get another key, and unlock the next lock, the next lock. So kids couldn't just dash in the house.
She always brought the most valuable thing she had in those days.
Coffee?
Her most valuable thing to her, this magic thing called instant coffee. So she always brought her a bottle of instant coffee with her when she came over the house in her purse.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And
Coffee.
when I worked in the IGA store, Bonnie Arnold was so sure that she was stealing things and putting them in her purse. And of course, when she comes to the checkout, she went to Mary Collins checkout, opened her purse up, and here's this jar of coffee. That's it, Well, I think Aunt Mary did also explain to Bonnie that this is her treasure. So it went with her everywhere she went.
Now, our former sister-in-law, Wilma, when Edna went through the dime store where she worked at, somebody was always assigned to follow her around because she would go around to make the violets and cut off a starter, take it home with her, start her own violets. So somebody had to follow her through the store. In the morning, we would have oatmeal, and if we didn't eat it all up, strong incentive to eat all the oatmeal that was cooked, because at noon, she would warm it up for our lunch. We'd have that.
Here we go.
We'd
Another
have
earthquake.
We'd have the oatmeal along with our sandwiches. And if we didn't eat all the oatmeal, she'd warm it up or give it to our German Shepherd. And sometimes he wouldn't touch it. Champ.
Champ, yeah.
Yeah, pretty good sized dog. We've got pictures somewhere around of standing on that sidewalk, going around the front of the house from the stairs, we're going upstairs, with Champ's feet on, I think it's Robert's shoulders.
Yeah.
It was that big. He would, when Mother came home from work at night, came in the dining room door, she'd open up the door and that dog would be waiting for her. he'd rise up off the floor when she rattled that door, and he wouldn't let her in that door until he sniffed and found out for sure who it was coming in the door. He was protecting the house.
Well, I can remember also along coming home from work at night, Mother saying to you and Robert and me, "You're keeping it too hot in the house. Turn the heat down when you go to bed." And one night she came in and she got us up because the candles that were on the buffet in the dining room
And melted.
had melted right down.
She'd leave for work and tell us what we were supposed to cook for dinner that night. And one of the things to cook maybe was some of the large vegetables like this. We weren't any more than a man in the moon going to cook, what were those things called?
Broccoli or
No, you weren't going to cook the broccoli either.
cauliflower,
We were going to cook
beets.
No, it wasn't beets. Something big like this. And we were more apt to open up a can of carrots or corn or peas, not. We weren't going to cook anything that was raw. But I just was working at IGA, and eventually it was just John and I there when she was working, so I'd bring home some cans of food, maybe half a pound of hamburger, and that'd be our supper. We'd cook it for our dinner at night. You remember that?
Yep.
And don't do that anymore, do we? We're gone. You gotta cook somewhere else, eat it there. Now we have roast beef. Lots of these, remember it all. Later years, we all got involved in camping. When you folks got involved, Mother bought a truck camper of her own and a 65 GMC pickup from a camper dealer in Charlotte. And one weekend we were up to
What's it tell us?
I think it was up in the Thumb area. And during the night, he was sitting up in the cab over. He rolled over and he kicked out the window above the cab over. And so Saturday morning, he had to go find a window replaced in front of the camper. She drove that camper for a lot of years.
Yeah, she did.
And eventually she sold that and bought herself back to pup tents and carried that in the back of her car. Off by herself. She was up in New York State. She's all over the place.
She took a lot of grandkids with her too.
Yeah, she did. There's a kind of a rite of passage to be old enough for Grandma to take you to Washington, D.C.
And you had to like cottage cheese.
Yeah.
For me, it was buttermilk.
Wow.
That was one thing I just could not stand was buttermilk. So that was a thing that it was going to be my lesson. I had to learn to drink buttermilk.
Who went with you? Who went with you? So did you go in her car or the motor in the pickup camper? Probably the pickup camper.
I don't really remember. I'm thinking the car because it was Amy and I were the first two to go, and Amy went summer of '63 because it was going to be me. I was going to be the first one, and then I got sick, or my mom said I was sick. There's a little debate there even today.
65 since she got her, 66 when she got her pickup